Okay. Call this meeting to order. Any declarations of interest? Seeing none, adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Decker, seconded by Councillor Kenny, that Council adopt the agenda for the meeting of June 15th, 2021 as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Adoption of the minutes. Council meeting minutes of June 1st, 2021. Moved by Councillor DeRose, seconded by Councillor Hanley, that the meeting minutes of June 1st, 2021 be hereby adopted. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mayor's report. On behalf of the City of Thorold, I would like to extend our heartfelt condolences, thoughts, and prayers to the Avzal family. We stand in solidarity with the people of London, Ontario, as well as Muslim Canadians across the country. The senseless act of violence resulting in 4 deaths and another with serious injuries has no place in our society. A statement released by the family for everyone from politicians to the public to stand against hate and Islamophobia in favor of humanity. On Wednesday, June 2nd, I participated in a virtual Zoom interview with Parasport Ontario Executive Director Jeff Thiessen to promote the Million Minutes Activity Challenge in June for Niagara's disability community. Let's come together as a community and support this important initiative. Find an activity that interests you and pursue it. If it's more than one activity, all the better. Reap the benefits of an active, healthy lifestyle and continue on with it not only in the month of June, but as part of your daily life. On Thursday, June 3rd, I was invited to participate in the Niagara Regional Police Service Strategic Plan Roundtable. They will be hosting a number of these sessions to allow for public input as they work to form a new strategic plan which will cover the 4 years of 2022 through 2025. On Sunday, June 6th, I laid a wreath at Memorial Park on behalf of all levels of government, federal, provincial, regional, and the City of Thorold, to pay tribute to our veterans and armed forces members on Decoration Day. This very small, short ceremony followed all the public health safety measures. Special thanks to Royal Canadian Legion Branch 17, Thorold, and Canadian Corps Unit 44, Thorold, who always go above and beyond to pay tribute to our veterans and armed force members. They shall not grow old, and as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. The Thorold Legion Branch 17 will be hosting a bottle drive on Saturday, June 26th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the Legion parking lot. Please save your empties and support this important fundraising initiative as the COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on them. On Tuesday, June 8th, Councillor Neal and I attended the One Thorold virtual meeting. They continue to work on many important issues, including housing and neighborhood hubs. The 3rd annual citywide spring food drive they organized was a major success, with a record amount of food and monetary donations collected. Approximately 11,688 pounds of food and over $3,800 in monetary donations were collected for community care. Once again, thank you to One Thorold event organizer, Hilder Vanderklip, Maxine Hutchings, Community Care Thorold, all the amazing volunteers and the residents of Thorold for stepping up to the plate and once again showing their great community spirit. On Wednesday, June 23rd, we will be raising the Italian flag with representation from Club Capri, a local lodge in the Order of the Sons of Italy. June is Italian Heritage Month. The flag raising recognizes the contributions made by persons of Italian heritage in the betterment of the City of Thorold community. On Friday, June 11th, Dr. Hergy provided his public health COVID-19 status update. Once again, the meeting takes place every 2 weeks, with the next one scheduled for Friday, June 25th at 2 p.m. These meetings are live streamed on the Niagara Region website. Vaccine rollout information is continually changing and being updated as vaccine supplies become known. This information is available on the Niagara Region website under COVID-19 vaccination clinics. All necessary links are there, including the provincial booking link. We will be posting information and updates as well on the city website and Facebook page. As stated many times, as vaccine rollout continues and second dose availability increases at the mass vaccination clinics, designated pharmacies who are now receiving more supply, and healthcare providers, we will get to a better place, but we must stay the course. Following the public health safety measures is imperative. Please follow these measures, continue to support one another, our frontline workers, those less fortunate or living alone, and more than ever, our local businesses who are the backbone of our community. If we do this, we will move on from stage 1 of the provincial reopening plan through stages 2 and 3 and an enjoyable summer and fall. Just a reminder, the Thorold Community Pool on Richmond Street will open as of Thursday, June 24th. Any aquatic questions or registration inquiries can be sent to pool@thorold.ca or 905-227-6613, extension 403. Please visit the city website and Facebook page for updates regarding the pool and other recreational amenities such as the Welland Canal Trail and the South Confederation Park tennis courts. Regarding Canada Day, the City of Thorold will offer 2 events to celebrate Canada Day this year. For the second time, Niagara municipalities have partnered to host Canada Day the Niagara way. This year's festivities will include a scavenger hunt, which will encourage residents to explore and discover Niagara. Residents can participate in the scavenger hunt for a chance to have fun and win prizes. Details on how to get involved will be posted June 21st on our Facebook page and website. In addition to Canada Day the Niagara Way, the city will also be hosting a Thorold, a drive-through event for residents. Anyone living in Thorold can pre-register online or book by phone to secure a spot. The event will feature several interactive stations where residents will briefly park to enjoy the displays. Stations will include the city's largest fire truck, a balloon artist, a virtual photo booth where guests can take a Canada Day photo from the comfort of their car. Details will be posted on June 16th. Registration will open June 21st. The City of Thorold understands that Canada Day will be different this year. In order to offer additional opportunities to residents, the city will also be hosting a summer program and event series. Outdoor fitness classes, children's art programs, and several movie in the park nights will be offered as restrictions ease. A summer program guide will be released by July 1st. All programs will require registration by phone or online. And before I close my mayor's remarks, I just want to say that I received a couple of phone calls stating that they've never seen our parks in such good shape. So I want to pass that along to our Public Works and Community Services group for the excellent job they're doing. And that's the end of my mayor's remarks. Regional Council update. We have Tim Whalen, Regional Councillor for Thorold, and he's going to give us an update from the region and the Thorold Runway Recognition Committee. Councillor Whalen, are you there?
Can you hear me okay now?
Yep.
Thank you. So, good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow councilors. It's great to be here once again tonight. First off, I'd like to wear 2 hats. First, there would be an update of what's happening at the regional level. And then I'd like to switch over to this Thorold Sports Runway of Recognition. Firstly, I'd like to update you on the 2 new regional healthcare facilities that are being built in our fine communities. The first is a rebuild of the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. The facility will be the west end of the peninsula is a state-of-the-art facility, obtaining all services that are currently available. Unfortunately, there are no other major differences in this hospital other than presence. It'll be presently updated for a more modern and state-of-the-art facility. The region has agreed to assist with the new project to a tune of 10.5 million, or 21% of the local contribution. The new building is anticipated a completion date of 2024. The second facility, which will be attracted to the south end of Thorold, is a new South Niagara site. This new hospital will be located at the Lions Creek in the QEW, and it's hard to fathom the new building will be approximately 1.2 million square feet. So it's just going to be unbelievable, the size of it. When finished, it'll house 469 beds, which includes 30 critical care beds, 170 complex care beds, and 269 medical surgical beds, 8 operating suites, and 42 hemodialysis stations. The total facility will increase our bed capacity in South Niagara by 150 beds. With the amount of programs that are being offered, it's hard to believe they can handle out of one facility. The new programs will include emergency medical programs, which are anticipating 91,000 annual visits. The mental health and addiction facility will house 20,000 annual visits. They'll have 42 kidney dialysis stations, 24,000 cardiorespiratory visits, and 179,000 diagnostic services. New to Niagara in this facility will be a complete complex care center of excellence, a stroke center of excellence, a geriatric psychiatry center of excellence, an Indigenous healing center, and finally, a wellness and aging center of excellence. To help add to the healthcare aspect, it will include a spiritual center, a cafeteria, an auditorium, an educational academic center, and retail space. This new building will add much to the people of Niagara Falls, and especially towards the south end of Thorold. And like the St. Catherine site and the West Niagara site, the facility will be asking the assistance of the region for the tune of 21%. This is equivalent to what St. Catherine site and the other sites have gotten also. So local contribution will be 44.5 million, the ask to be affiliated by the region. To accommodate for both hospitals, an increment of $715,000, or 0.2% of the levy addition to the base 1.5 million, which is already allotted in the 2021 budget. And we'll be requesting part of the 22 budget coming up. For the completion of the date of the hospital is 2026, and there's much to look forward to in the area of healthcare, and also an economic spin-off to the south end of Thorold, which will definitely benefit the south end of Thorold and most likely all of Thorold. So this is my presentation. Is there any other questions that I can ask of anybody, any other thing to do with the region? Mr. Mayor, do you want me to ask, or are you going to?
No, go ahead, Councillor Thorold.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for being present. Tim, we've had several conversations, including even up to today, about safe testing, water well testing, and I just wanted to get an update for everybody from you. I know you had, so if you can share that, that'd be great.
Yeah, good question, Councilor Rose. Speaking at public health today, it's all ready to go. We just need a facility in Thorold, and I believe Jeff Holman has a spot, or getting a spot location ready to pick up. So once that is placed, the region's all ready to go. The test kits are all in place. It's just a matter of picking up at a city spot, do your testing, bring it back there, and then the region will be responsible for getting the test out for you.
Thank you, Councillor Whelan. It's much appreciated.
Yeah,
thank you.
Well, Big Park Colburn already got theirs going, so it's not much to put Thorold in place, and probably Pelham. I'm sure there's a lot of other rural places also that could benefit from this. But it is important for the people in the rural area.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for your work.
Any other questions on that? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
I know, just in your presentation, you're mentioning about mental health. I wanted to ask you in regards to IMP Dean Allison. He sponsored a local advocate's petition on mental health. Stephen Seuss was his name, and I want to know, could you tell me why the region would have turned down his request? He came to several councils, and we supported it, but I know actually, because he sent me an email, need to know region turned us down. And I just wanted to ask, why would that be? In the state of COVID-19, and he went to all municipalities and all accepted, except the region turned down, and then he forwarded his petition through Dean Allison. He sponsored a local social advocate, so thankfully it's gone through, but I was surprised that the region turned it down. Did you know why?
Yeah, I'm surprised there's also, Councilor Henry, but I'm not sure, but I will find out and I'll definitely get back over the next few days. Let you know what circumstances are.
Yeah, it was Stephen Seuss. He came to our council also, and he done it to all their councilors,
Councilor,
councils, but but the region actually turned down his
can I ask when the
request.
presentation was made at this council,
Declare
Councilor?
the state of
Can I ask when that
Stephen
presentation
Seuss
was
his
made?
name,
So,
SLSS.
Okay, one at a time here.
Oh, the date would have, I can get you the date exactly when he came to council. I'll get you the date he came to council.
okay,
And when he made the request, I can get that specifically for you. For sure I can.
if you don't
Yeah.
mind, then we'll get back to you, definitely. You don't look get like that in the mouth. It sounds like a great proposal.
Because
Okay,
he was wanting to declare a state of emergency on mental health and then a lot of other issues with homelessness, with the amount of teenagers homelessness, the amount of adult homelessness, and so on. And actually in the region actually turned down that request.
Especially, we had a presentation at Public Health today about
And
homelessness.
then MP Dean Allison brought it to the House,
okay.
Okay, yeah,
just to let you know, but I can find that out for you for sure.
that's appreciated, and we'll definitely get
I'm
back to
asking
you,
them right
Councilor.
now.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So you want to continue, Councillor Whalen, on the runway?
Sure will. So putting my other hat on, I'd like to switch over to the runway, specifically the White Family Foundation Scholarship Awards. The deadline has come and gone for submissions for applicants, and it's great to know that we've had many great ones. So from here, the plan is to start interviewing of the applications early July and have the runway committee make a final decision by the end of the month. So it's hopefully introduce the male and female recipients here at council, and hopefully we get a live session in August. Things are looking good, so hopefully that might be the case. And this year is a gift for many young persons. It's only a dream to assist them with their education and to kick off to the real world. So as far as the runway gala goes, to go with this scholarship, we're still hoping to get live with the 2019 award ceremony. And right now it's not too good, but we're hoping to maybe in the fall or early spring. So we'll get back to you once we get a rebooking, just to see when we get normal. So otherwise, thanks you very, very much for giving me the time tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Whalen. Go ahead, Councillor Decker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Tim, that's great with the White Family Scholarships. Will all the candidates be interviewed, and who's going to be handling the interviews?
We'll have three committee members from the runway, and then one of the White family is going to do the interviews. So we've got 11 applications, and some of the applications are just fantastic. We've got some great sports and some great new future residents of Thorold to go with that.
That's great. I applaud them for doing that, and I think that was wonderful that they put that out there. Thank you, and pass along my thank you to them as well.
Thank you, especially with a $40,000 possible scholarship over 4 years. Just so anybody can even ask for it. It's just a fantastic start to their life.
Yeah, it is. It was awesome. Thank you.
So we're looking forward, and we'll get back to you with the names once we get them picked.
Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Councillor Sentence, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's find out.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Councillor Whalen. I appreciate the presentation. I think we've talked before. It's should be important to people to know they don't have to be a junior B player. They don't have to be a professional. They don't have to be playing travel. They can be, anybody can apply for this. It's playing sports, or maybe you could explain it better, but it doesn't have to be, a travel person that applies for this.
Definitely, it's the all-around citizen of the Thorold, whoever does extracurricular work. And speaking of that vein, most of the applications weren't all-stars. They might have played 3 or 4 or 5 different sports. We have one fellow that's, I think, black belt karate. So any type of sports will do. And like I say, we're looking for the all-around citizen as opposed to a star. So, although being a star doesn't hurt. And it was crazy. As the applications came in, I think we had one at 88%, then went up to 92. I think we got a couple at 95 and 97% overall average in high school. So we got some smart people in the city of Thorold, which is fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much, Councillor Whalen, and we appreciate you coming and filling us in, not only from the region, but on the dealings of the runway recognition and the White Foundation Scholarship. So look forward to you coming back in August. Thank you. Okay. Up next, we have presentations. Daria Paragadova from Airden Burles LLP on the Code of Conduct Complaints 2020-11 and 2020-13 Integrity Commissioner reports. Is John here as well?
It'll just be myself tonight, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. Good evening.
Go ahead. I say Daria, but it says Dasha. What should I call you?
Daria is my legal name, and that
Okay,
tends
so
to be
we'll
what the
use
legal documents say, but I tend to go by Dasha with those that know me, and by all means, that applies to everyone here this evening, so Dasha is just fine.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to all council members and staff members. Two reports, namely for complaints 2020-11 and -13, were provided for your review. One was provided for information purposes only, which was 2020-13, as no recommendations were made and the complaint was dismissed. In 2020-11, we have made a recommendation of no penalty or reprimand. So both reports were provided through the clerk for your review. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, but as is consistent with our practice, we typically don't take you through the reviews at council meetings in detail, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that would have arisen following your review of the reports.
Okay, so I'll open up the floor for questions. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Thank you, Dasha. Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Dasha, can you just review what the Integrity Commissioner's role is or duty in these proceedings, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor DeRose, specifically with respect to Code of Conduct complaints, I just want to make sure I understand your question correctly.
Yeah, that's correct. So, in regards to 2020-11, has the member contravened the code?
With respect to 2020-11, we have found a minor contravention of the code, but we have not recommended a reprimand or penalty given the lack of severity of the contravention and the fact that there was no contravention history.
Okay. When I read your recommendations, you state the punishment for violating this specific code of conduct, subsection 2223.4 of the Municipal Act, authorizes the Integrity Commissioner to recommend and impose the following penalty: a reprimand and a suspension of up to 90 days without remuneration. Then in the same paragraph, you state, we do not recommend their imposition. We find it to be sufficient that the councillor is warned regarding the tone of his emails, which could be perceived as intimidating or critical. Well, I'm just curious, how do you think the individual that the emails were directed at feels? I would think they were intimidating or critical. So I need a thorough explanation from you as to why you gave a recommendation of what the possible penalties could be, but then you kind of use your personal opinion, which doesn't support that, and tells us not to follow through with any punishment that you recommended and that the code authorizes, other than a warning. Is this common?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Councillor DeRose, there are a number of questions there, so I'll attempt to address each one of your points.
Sorry about that. Yes.
No, that's fine. I'm happy to answer, and that's why I'm here. So first of all, with respect to the Integrity Commissioner's role and Section 223(4) sub 5 of the Municipal Act, the Integrity Commissioner is authorized to recommend penalties to a member who is found to recommend the code. The Municipal Act does not require the Integrity Commissioner to recommend an imposition of those specific penalties. Those are simply the options available. However, they are subject to the Integrity Commissioner's discretion, and certainly with respect to your latter question of how common is it, and why does the Municipal Act contemplate those specific remedies, and why an Integrity Commissioner may make a recommendation, the spectrum is quite broad. There are a number of things pursuant to the many integrity commissioner decisions that exist, not just for Thorold, but across all different municipalities, where a number of factors are taken into account. And you'll see that language in our prior reports as well that you would have considered, where prior contravention history was absolutely taken into account when recommending whether to impose a reprimand or a suspension of pay for any given amount of time. So I hope that addresses some of your points. I do just want to also address your question with respect to how do you think the member feels, et cetera. I certainly don't want to speculate, but all I'll say is that this was a very thorough investigation, as we always do with the investigations that do move forward that warrant an actual investigation. All parties are spoken to, who the complainant and the respondent, and everything is taken into account. We do take that into account, of course, when making our findings. And I don't want to speculate on anyone's personal feelings. Our role really is to contemplate the code and what is permissible under the code. And that's what we've done here. I do feel the necessity to correct you that certainly it's not based on my personal opinion. It's based on our objective approach to investigations and our integrity commissioner work in reaching our conclusion.
Is this common to do that? To offer your opinion on whether the punishment should be doled out or not? Like say out of 100 cases, what's the percent that you might do that? I'm just curious.
I can't give you a
ballpark approximation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't give you a percentage because each case is heavily fact dependent. And there is no formula for making. That's why an investigation is most often required, because the facts are so different with each specific case. And that's in the Municipal Act's remedies that are afforded are very specific, but it is really the fact finders, or the integrity commissioners in this case, their role to assess whether, number one, an investigation is warranted. And most often that's with respect to whether there is still a factual circumstance that is not readily available or apparent. And so an investigation is done to make sure that we have a proper factual base on which to make recommendations. And based on that, recommendations are made. And to respond to your direct question, Councillor DeRose, absolutely, it is the fundamental role, if there is any kind of finding of a contravention of the code, whether it be minor, somewhere along the spectrum, or major, that a recommendation be made. It is also common to see that recommendations be made that no penalty or reprimand is appropriate, especially where the contravention is minor.
Okay, I just want to conclude. Thank you, Dasha, for your answers. I kind of feel like you guys overstepped your role, because when council votes on your recommendations, you kind of use moral suasion to influence council's decision, and thus your initial recommendation. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers of Thorold who are paying the expenses. And I'll just end with that. Thank you, Dasha.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your comment, Councillor DeRose. Respectfully, I'll have to disagree with you in the sense that our job, pursuant to the Code of Conduct and the complaint mechanism, is to make a recommendation based on our findings. And in fact, I would consider our job being complete if we didn't make a recommendation. As to what council does with those recommendations are absolutely up to council, and that's really what the role here is today, is for you to take the report. We've set out a very detailed factual background for you to consider, including all of the details which we found important, and certainly council has the discretion to not adopt the recommendations that we have put forward and to substitute those for what they deem to be appropriate.
Yeah, I kind of disagree in that I lost my train of thought, sorry. But anyway, that's all right. I'll go to the next questioner, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, thank you.
Councillor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dasha, for coming in. I appreciate the detailed reports. I appreciate what you guys did. I will be following the recommendations as you have them set out, as we did before. And I don't see anything wrong with the way you did it or making recommendations. So that will be my vote. Thank you.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. What is the usual cost for an integrity report? I know it won't be always the same, but what's the ballpark figure on a report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, that's not a question I'm going to answer today, just because I would hate to mislead you or anybody or any members of the public, because exactly as you said, Councillor Neal, the spectrum is just quite broad. You have investigations pertaining to multiple complaints of multiple instances of a significant history. You have complaints with an isolated incident, which may warrant an investigation. You have complaints with multiple witnesses, or you have complaints with very few witnesses or just documentary evidence. So really the spectrum is just so broad that it would be irresponsible to offer an estimate.
Thank you for that comment. Maybe staff could just take a look at the number that we've had and just give us a ballpark figure on not the actual reports, but just what it costs for each of the reports that have been put through.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Neal, if I may just add to that answer, certainly one thing that I would leave council with is that as Integrity Commissioner, we take it very seriously when we do undertake an investigation, and we only do so in circumstances where an investigation is absolutely warranted. So there are some instances where there may be a complaint that's appropriate for summary dismissal or no investigation is warranted, and we will treat that more as a summary process. So it's a very careful consideration with certainly costs in mind.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanley.
Are we just talking about Councillor Kenny, or can we talk about the mayor report complaints? What are we doing, one at a time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to, subject to the mayor's comments, I'm happy to take questions on both.
Okay, if I could, in regard to the complaints filed against the mayor, as we know in there, it speaks in regards to the complaint, I think first in December 9th, 2020. Anyways, and we were dealing with the consortium agreement then in regards to the Canada Games project. Can I ask, had the approved consortium agreement no one finalized in just a few weeks ago, was your report to council timed in any way to come after the approval of the consortium group? Were you waiting for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Henley, apologies. Could you please repeat your question? You cut out for a moment and I missed a part of it.
When we were, we had just recently approved the consortium agreement in question just a few weeks ago. And I was asking, was your report to council timed in any way to come after the approval? Were you waiting for the approval, or it just happened to come that way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Henley, no. So the approval, I believe, happened during the closed session of council on November 10th. And the complaint, I believe, I can give you the exact date, I just have it pulled up here. I believe the complaint actually was made after that fact. So there's no way that we could have timed it with the approval, if that's the approval that you're referring to.
No, I mean your report to council tonight.
I see.
For what was going to happen because of that complaint. Was that timed in any way to wait until the consortium agreement had actually been finalized?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my ignorance should suggest the answer to that question, which is no, it wasn't. I was not aware of the timing of that. We stay very disciplined with respect to the evidence that's provided to us, and in our interviews, we are not always aware of all the other happenings that may be happening at council or at the city unless they're directly pertinent. So no, I was not aware.
Okay, could I also ask you, Ms. Mayor, your report states that Councillor Kenny was appointed by council to be the council designated negotiator. That's correct?
The report, through you, Mr. Mayor, the report references the resolution that was adopted that a councillor, and I'm just scrolling down to the exact wording. Bear with me for one moment, please.
Too long here.
Pardon me, just having a couple of documents open here. That a counselor was appointed to partake in the negotiations for the Canada Summer Games. That's correct, Councillor Henley.
Okay, and can I ask you, so then, and then at that time, just for your, getting to where, you come to the recommendation that the mayor had the right to do so. So at that time, I'm thinking that council had made a special rule, and then your report states the mayor has powers that give him the right to negotiate, even though council did not appoint him to negotiate. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the findings were that council provided that a counselor specifically sit on the negotiating committee to prepare the partnership agreement. So that we agreed with that submission, and that was in fact voted on by council. What we didn't find is that by virtue of a counselor's involvement, which ended up being Councillor Kenny, as everybody knows, that necessarily excluded the mayor from having any role, because such role is contemplated by several things. First of all, the Municipal Act, and we've set out the sections, but also because as the city's chief representative, the mayor had from time to time been invited as the head of council and as the city's chief representative to specific meetings and for specific purposes, and that he may do so at his pleasure on account of his ex officio role. So it's correct, both of those findings were made.
Okay, so is there anyone specifically that gave the mayor the power to negotiate, even though had made it a special rule in your report? Like, is there one specifically there? Because, just knowing what holds the future, it's like, do I as a councillor have the same right, or would I have had the same right to enter into those negotiations? Because I see nowhere in I see nowhere in actually trying to read what the code, what the role of the mayor is, that gives him the authorization if council makes a motion to act on, if he wants to be a part of it. That's what I'm getting at. So would I have that same right? Because in our, what I'm looking at is our terms of what the mayor's role as a council in the Municipal Act. To me, that doesn't really spell out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe the answer to your question, Councillor Hanley, is that your interpretation that you would have the same right would be consistent with the findings of the report. What the report found was that council voted specifically to have a councillor involved and partake in the negotiations, which I understand was already at some stage of the negotiations taking place, so it wasn't at the very start. And Councillor Kenny was appointed for that purpose. The rule, call it, that council voted on to include a councillor, to us did not read to exclude the mayor from having any role in the process, some of which was already ongoing, as in his capacity as ex officio, and the fact that he does serve as head of council and the city's chief representative. And we saw that, and you would have seen in our recommendations that perhaps there had been some shortcomings from the start, not just with respect to that specific rule of the inclusion of Councillor Kenny, but just generally about who does what and how it all takes place, given that it's a very, from what we understand, a very complicated negotiation. Some protocol earlier on could perhaps have been helpful, but notwithstanding that, our findings are very clear that that specific vote on the inclusion of a councillor did not in any way result in the mayor breaching a rule or policy, given his general role and his specific role.
So we would have had to specifically state that when we, at the moment, that it would only be Councillor Kenny. So in that case then, so according to your report, then only Councillor Kenny and Mayor Ugolini were the only members of council that legally could help negotiate the terms of the consortium and lease agreements. No members of council could have been part of it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I hesitate to give sort of legal advice in open session pertaining to what legally could have and couldn't have happened. However, I will state that based on our interpretation of the vote with respect to which councillor was going to partake in the negotiations and the mayor's general role as specified in the Municipal Act, and the fact that the mayor had already played an overarching role and had to some extent been involved. And as you would read in the report, his involvement really was consistent with the other members if I may, at his level within the negotiations. It was not, he was not partaking in negotiations to actually negotiate the details, and rather to help the parties come through any major impasse when it did arise.
Okay, then that's good. Because from what I read it, then in that case, then it can be said that Councillor Kenny and Mayor Ugolini were the sole members responsible for negotiating on behalf of the city that commits us now to a residency agreement that's going to last 38 years and will cost the taxpayers close to $90 million. And provides an ownership. I thank you for your report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Decker.
Because it's a public document now, so.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dasha, for your report. I just want to say it was very detailed and thorough. I totally understand the Integrity Commissioner's role with these complaints, and I understand and respect your findings. And I appreciate that we have someone that's impartial to what's to when these complaints are brought forward, and that there's an objective look at them. So I just want to say that I'm going to support your report, and I thank you for your findings. So thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Decker.
Councillor Longo.
Thank you. I'll go directly to Ms. Paragudova, please. Because Mr. Mayor, I think you should have stepped aside from chairing this meeting, but that's just my opinion. I just want to go on record as stating that I was the one that filed the complaint. It wasn't directed personally at the mayor, it was just directed at the process. I don't want to hide behind anything. I know we can do this anonymously, but I feel I need to be quite clear that I was the one that did it. And I do respect the decision and the role of the Integrity Commissioner, although I'll respectfully disagree, obviously, with your findings. But I just wanted to go on record saying that. Thank you.
And I had Councillor Wilson. Did you have your hand up?
Now, I was going to make comments about, well, I guess I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would like to state that I do have a strong understanding of the Integrity Commissioner's role, how they investigate, and from my background in HR, I'm very familiar with the same sort of process, so not the same role, I agree, but I think they've done everything fairly, and like I've felt in the past, we have to have an Integrity Commissioner. It's part of the act, and I think it was very thorough. It seems like they got everyone's opinions on both sides and all the facts, and so I'm going to stick with my supporting their recommendations. And I also think there's absolutely nothing wrong with them making recommendations. That's what we're paying for, so I don't think that that's making us biased in any way, but thank you.
Okay, is there any further questions? Okay, seeing none. Dasha, thank you so much for your presentations. And where are we with this to the clerk? We're done? We're done. Okay, thank you so much for your presentation and coming here and answering all the questions. We appreciate everything.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor. If I may, I do, with the complaint that was dismissed, I don't believe there's any further action to be taken. However, I do believe that council would have to vote in order to approve the recommendation of no penalty or reprimand with respect to complaint 2020-11. Apologies if I'm overstepping or that was contemplated, but I did want to put that on the table.
To our clerk. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to members of council, that the report was received for information and that they're with agreement with the report. Sorry, Josh, I'm butchering it a little bit. That no penalty will be recommended.
Sorry, can I say something, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councilor Wilson.
So basically, we would just be making a vote on accepting the recommendations. I think that's what it should be. And I do agree with Councillor Longo, though, maybe you should have somebody else step in to take that vote.
Well, there is no vote on the. Do you want to explain? I'll let the clerk explain why.
Sure. Through the mayor to members of council. So with regards to integrity commissioner complaint, if there is a perceived pecuniary interest, then the member may discuss with the integrity commissioner whether or not there is a conflict or a perceived conflict. With regards to the complaint against Councillor Kenny, there is or should be no perceived conflict. With regards to the one against the mayor, I believe that the mayor or the person whom the complaint is against may participate within the discussion, and if there is no pecuniary interest or perceived pecuniary interest, then they can stay within the discussion.
But are we just receiving it? I have no problem stepping aside, so I will step aside because there is no recommendation on that report. So, but are we just?
Oh, because the recommendation's to not do anything. Okay, I get it. Sorry.
There's no recommendation
Mr.
on
Mayor,
13
may
or something
may
there?
I offer perhaps some guidance? If on the report concerning yourself, that's 2020-11, the complaint was dismissed, so there are no recommendations to consider. The only recommendations to consider are with respect to 2020-13 pertaining to Councillor Kenny, where we have not recommended a penalty or reprimand. And that is the recommendation to be accepted or not accepted by council. The other one is being received only for information.
Okay. I'll still step aside just for all intents and purposes, and I'll hand the chair over to Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're only dealing with the one complaint then, 2020-11, correct?
We're only dealing, or is it 13? Or,
Well, I don't want to deal with 13 because I'm I'm the complainant. So
Yeah.
that would be the same as you chairing the meeting.
so I can do the 11, right? That's the one.
2013.
Through the mayor to members of council, because the complaint was dismissed, we are not dealing with 2020-11, we're dealing with 2020-13, which was,
No other way around.
The other way around.
is it the other way
through you,
around?
Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor, that's right.
We're dealing with 2020-11, which is dealing with Councillor Kenny. The one with regards to the mayor was actually dismissed, so 2020-13 does not have any recommendation.
That's right.
That's correct, Madam Clerk. And the other thing, the last thing
I
I'll
can-
say,
I can
hopefully,
maintain
is
the
that
chair.
Councillor Kenny will have an opportunity to address council should he so wish with respect to the recommendations.
Okay, so we're doing 20-11, and if we're accepting the recommendations from the Integrity Commissioner, and now the floor is open. Did you want to speak, Councillor Kenny? Go ahead. I can't hear your mic.
I just wanted to ask Dasha a question. 2020-11 and 2020-13. Does that mean there was another complaint filed in between that was dismissed also?
Yeah, but that's not what we're here for, Councillor Kenny. We're only here
Okay.
to, okay? So
Through
I'm
you,
not
Mr.
taking,
Mayor, it's a very simple answer, actually. If you don't mind, I'm happy to provide it. There was a complementary Municipal Conflict of Interest Act application filed along with Code of Conduct Complaint 2020-11, and that's referenced right up front in the summary of our report for 2020-11. After some back and forth with the person who had made that application, they decided not to pursue it, and so that was what took up that 2020-12 number, which ultimately did not proceed. I hope that addresses your question.
okay?
Thank you.
So, is there any further discussion on accepting the Integrity Commissioner's recommendation? Can I need a mover and a seconder? I need a mover and a seconder. I got a mover, Councillor Decker, seconder, Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Do we need a motion to receive the other report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we don't.
Okay. So we're done then. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank you very
everything,
much.
guys.
Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you. Up next, we have Kim Rossi, Director of, what?
Sorry, through the mayor to members of council. The presenter has just asked through email if they can reschedule the presentation for another date.
The one on,
Path Stones.
okay,
Kim Rossi. Yeah.
that's fine. Okay, so we'll move on to motions to receive and file minutes and adopt recommendations of council, committees, and boards. Minutes to review for information purposes, moved by Councillor Senton, seconded by Councillor Kenny, that council receive and file the minutes of the committees of council boards as presented. Heritage Thorold LACAC, Tourism Advisory Committee, Thorold Public Library Board, and Age Friendly Committee. Does there anyone want to speak to any of those? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. There's no statement by councilors. There's consent reports. I have 3, 15A, B, and C. Does anyone want to pull any of those reports? Okay, I have a mover, Councillor Neal, and a seconder, Councillor Decker, that council approve the following consent reports, 15A, B, and C. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Whew.
Discussion reports. PWCS 2021-03. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Neal, and I'll turn this over to our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman. Jeff, are you there?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I also have some members of staff available to answer any questions you might have. This is on the South Main Street Bridge Front Park project. The recommendation is that council approve the permanent closure of the South Main Street Bridge as recommended in the municipal class environmental assessment. And 2, that council approve the engagement of RJ Burnside and Associates Limited to complete the preliminary design for the future Port Robinson East Waterfront Park at an upset limit of $52,360.50 plus HST. And 3, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary contract documents.
Okay, before I turn that over, I just wanted to state that we all received a couple of emails from residents regarding this issue and the next issue, and I hope everyone had a chance to read them. Councillor DeRose, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Jeff, or anybody in your any staff that can answer. I've just got 2 questions that were brought up by some residents, local residents in Port Robinson. The first one, the report by McIntosh Perry used the Ontario Structural Inspection Manual for its assessment of the bridge, but it appears to be constructed for bridges that carry vehicular traffic, so cars. Was there ever a separate assessment carried out focused on the bridge as strictly a pedestrian structure? And is such a report, if it exists, available to the public?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps Sean Dunsmore, who's a project manager, can provide more detail.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. A separate inspection for it as a pedestrian-only bridge is not possible. The building code, as it relates to bridges, forces us. Forces us to ensure that maintenance vehicles can cross the bridge no matter what the bridge is. The inspection that was done with that in mind, with a light maintenance vehicle only, not a heavy highway bridge truck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Second question is, why does the recommendation to hire RJ Burnside to complete a preliminary plan for Waterfront Park and not also direct them to incorporate a bridge, rehabilitated or replacing the existing structure, as 3 out of the 4 McIntosh Perry reports alternative solution recommends, and which Port Robinson East residents have strongly and repeatedly asked for. Thank you.
Sean,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead.
again,
Yeah, go ahead.
the report makes a final recommendation. The recommended moving forward is the removal of the bridge. The preliminary design is to help accommodate some of the recreational uses that are taking part on the bridge right now in the waterfront design. And therefore, we don't think that the bridge will be needed later on.
Okay, and Sean, are you guys, just one more question, are you guys continuing conversations with the residents there? Is that ongoing?
Absolutely. The process for the preliminary design is very much a public outreach. What type of facilities they'd like to see in there, how we can accommodate some of their existing uses without using that bridge.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's very important. Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sean. So Sean, I know that when this has first come up, removing the deck, before I think the first time this has come forward, the city had put away $75,000 for demolition. So as far as the demolition cost, is this $56,000 going to be a part of that assessment? Because at that time it was estimated it could cost us $750,000 or more to remove that deck. Because if I understand it right, we're going to keep the supporting piers and just remove the deck and use those piers to build a new boardwalk on. That's the intention.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that has not been decided yet.
No, but that's one of the conceptions of possibility.
I would suggest that we're not leaning towards that. No, I would suggest that the option is complete removal of the bridge down to the water level, and then putting some boardwalks along the sides or in other locations to accommodate the recreational uses. So, but we haven't gone through the study yet, so we haven't determined what we really want to do.
Okay, because I'll tell you, it concerns me that sounds like you've already made a decision without really consulting the residents and as to what their wishes may be. But I know there's been consulting going on, but I don't want to present that. But you know, let's go through the process. It's been a long one. I was there when it originally started, and we had to make the pathway around the bridge, which the city accommodated them with. But you know, I'm hoping that part of the feature there is still there. They have concerns with the swallows. I actually read Ron Devereaux's. I didn't realize we had another one because I just got it today. And you know, I read it, and I know that before there was assessment with swallows there and the turtles and so on and so forth. So if we're looking to get some conceptual ideas or drawings, is there going to be a public forum, or the city's going to hire this consultant for $56,000 and he's going to come back and say, this is what's recommended, or is the intent for him, the person or the company we hire, to actually engage the residents themselves?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent is absolutely to engage the residents themselves, to look at options as it relates to moving forward. Part of the reason, though, that the bridge is being removed is because the piers and the foundations are actually rotting. And so there may not be anything too valuable there for us to save. Not to say we couldn't put up new ones in their place, but the existing ones have seen their lifespan.
Even with, I know I had supplied, if I could, Mr. Mayor, to you, I know that I had been able to get the city some drawings from back when the last rehabilitation of that bridge was done, I believe these. So even though nothing is salvageable there, your
through you, Mr. Mayor, through you, Mr. Mayor, I doubt it.
Okay.
But we will have somebody design it accordingly.
Yep. Okay. It's a step forward, anyways. You know, I've talked to some residents too, if I could, and it's a take it away or give it to me aspect. You know, some want it, some don't. Some want one type of aspect, some want another. So I'm gonna accept the report and wait for you to come back and see what can be presented. That's all we can do, or we're gonna be at a standstill for how long? a stalemate. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Sentence.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Sean or Jeff. My question is, after talking to a couple of residents too, is it possible or is it necessary to use the terminology closing the bridge permanently before we do the water study for the water park with public input? I'm happy to hear that's what we're doing. I think we should keep all options open, at least on paper, until the study's done. Then we have the study, they can see the design. Maybe they love it, maybe it's great, maybe everything, there's no question about it from there. But at least we have something if we wanted to go back, and I didn't know it was structurally that bad, but if we wanted to go back, do we have to use the terminology closed permanently right now before we do this study, or can we do this study with the public input and just keep that wording open? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to clarify something for Councillor Sentence, and that is, it's been closed permanently for years.
Oh.
It was closed back in the 80s permanently. There was no, there's been, all the use of this bridge in the recent times has been against the recommendation of the city.
Oh, so this has been closed before our term, before anything, that this has been closed that whole time? Like,
sure, yep.
Closed, I mean, the term has been closed. Wow, I didn't know that. Thank you, Sean.
Yep.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what we're going to vote on tonight is getting rid of number 2, 3, and 4 options. And we're going to go with number 1 option. Is this what I'm looking at here? I know we're closing permanently the bridge, and most likely we'll have to spend some money taking most of it down. And I don't see any costs in this report at all, whether it's number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4. And it's hard to make a decision when we don't have costs in front of us, even to just tear the bridge down. And so I'm not sure whether I want to vote for this or not. I mean, it's I agree that the way the bridge is now, it should stay as a permanent closure. But that's not what we're here tonight for. We're here tonight to move forward on this. And I didn't realize that we were going to do a waterfront park until I saw the document earlier this week. It's hard to make a decision when there's no costs involved, and when we know there's a lot of costs involved in this.
Does Jeff or Curtis want to speak to that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can start, yes, the costs are not in the actual staff report, but they are referenced in the EA document, Councillor Neal. The preferred alternative, the one that's being advanced tonight, is happens to be the least expensive. However, that would be just to look at removing the structure and the piers. What's important to the community is, what is the cost to build the waterfront park? What does it look like? And we don't have the answer to that until we have the consultant take us through the process, and we go through the public process to see what amenities need to be added.
Yeah, I don't mind the consultant do that for us. If that's all we are doing tonight, is looking at a consultant's report on what his vision might be regarding that area. But as far as maybe revamping the bridge itself, and I have some numbers here which I looked for, 900,000, 1.8 million, and 2 million 0.60 as numbers, but they're just numbers on paper. And as we know, especially nowadays, costs have gone up substantially over the last year. And so it's going to be a lot more. And the people in Port Robbins have to know what the cost might be if we were to revamp the bridge. And I hope that's part of the consultant's report. But I'll go along with engaging a consultant to take a look at and take a look at putting a new park in there. But before I make a decision on whether to get rid of the bridge and not build a new one, I reserve that right until the consultant's report comes back.
Curtis, did you want to touch in on that? I seen your hand up. And
yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the general idea of this report here is that we're taking the same approach that we did with Battle of Beaver Dams Park. So the idea here is to go out to the community out in Port Robinson and get extensive public feedback on what they want to see out in that area. And then from there, they're going to create a conceptual design with a cost estimate for council's consideration. That's what this report is. Sean's speaking about what we're doing with the bridge, which is linked to this, but that's not directly what this report is about. This report is speaking to what we want to do with this park or this bridge in the future based on the feedback from the residents. So this consultant will come back with a conceptual design based on extensive public consultation. And it's written out in the RFP that they're going to have to spend some time on that bridge with the guys out there fishing, posting posters on the doors 4 days in advance so that everybody knows they're coming, so that they can get the feedback and their comments in. PICs are involved. They're going to be talking to Port Robinson Proud, all those groups to talk about what they want to see in the future for this bridge. And that's what we're talking about tonight in terms of what we're approving. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that, because the number one that we're going to vote on is permanent closure, and I disagree with the permanent closure until we have the consultant's report and have the costs of 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's what I would like to change that from approving a permanent closure of the South Main Street Bridge to closure of the South Main Bridge until the consultant's report comes forward.
so do you want to make that amendment there, Councillor Neal?
Yes, I will make that amendment.
So your amendment is, can you repeat it, please, for the clerk?
Yeah, that the council approved the closure of the bridge until the consultant's report comes forward and make a decision at that time.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sentence. Okay, speakers just to the amendment, okay? Is anyone want to speak to the amendment? I got Councillor Decker.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to be clear. The bridge has been closed permanently since the 80s. If we keep the bridge up, is it safe to keep it up? Could people get hurt if the bridge is left intact the way it is?
Mr. Mayor, if I could answer that question. The answer is no, it's not safe. We should not be encouraging people to use that structure for any reason. And that's the main reason why we've taken we used the EA process to identify all the potential options and risks. By adopting the recommendation that come out of the EA process, we're effectively removing the option to keep the existing structure. Part of the challenge that we've had is trying to figure out what we're going to do with that area once the structure gets removed. And that's why the report, to follow it up with a waterfront park proposal, should provide the community with some relief that we're going to address those passive recreational uses that they brought forward during the EA process. So in effect, the council has already hired McIntosh Perry to look at the report, and they're recommending that it be taken down.
Thank you for that, Jeff. So I can't then support the amendment because I don't want people to use a bridge that's unsafe where they can get hurt. And I respect what staff is recommending, that it needs to come down for that reason. So I can't support your friendly amendment.
Okay, I got Councillor Hanley.
In regards to Councillor Neal's amendment, I believe the structure The bridge has been closed since the 80s. There's some barriers up and whatnot. I know his intent is there. And I do believe, if I could say, that his motion to keep the bridge intact and the motion for the water and park are in parcel the same. Because I, as a councillor, believe that if a motion does come to council, that we shouldn't be having a motion first to tear down the bridge and then vote to spend the money and tear down the bridge. And when it comes time for this waterfront park, oh, we don't have the money. So I believe if we're gonna make a recommendation to pass tearing down the bridge that same night in connection with that a report also comes first for the waterfront park, because it happens far too often. We vote to do one thing on the intentions to do another, and when it comes to do the next step, we don't have the funding to do it. So to me, tearing down the bridge and the waterfront park should be presented together. We agree to pay to take the bridge down if that's what it comes to be, just saying, and we agree at the same night as part of the same expenditure to build the waterfront park. Because I already know some residents have already said that to me. Oh, I know what they're gonna do. They're gonna tear down the bridge and that stuff, and we're never gonna see a waterfront park. It's already been mentioned to me in the last couple of days. That's one of some people's fears already. You know, I hate to say it, but that's their fears. It happens, and they know what they say. We live in the rural area. It happens far too often.
Okay, so Councillor Hanley, you're agreeing with the amendment. Am I correct?
I'm agreeing with Councillor on that stuff.
Okay, Councillor
So we're gonna
DeRose.
keep the bridge intact, and the both should be brought and presented at the same time. So to alleviate any fears, like I mentioned, that,
Okay,
as I
Councillor
said,
Hanley,
far too
we've,
often it happens, we do one and then we don't follow up on the other.
Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with Councillor Neal, and I will support his friendly amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to speak to the amendment? Okay. So we're going to vote on the amendment. Okay. Do you want to read the amendment again for the clerk, just so everybody's clear what they're voting on?
Sure. Through the mayor to members of council, the amendment moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Sentence, is to amend the first clause to read that council approve the closure of the South Main Street Bridge until consultant's report comes forward.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, now the rest of the report. Does anyone want to speak to the rest of the report? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. PWCS 2021-27, moved by Councillor Hanley, seconded by Councillor Kenny. And I'll again turn this over to our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that staff be directed to re-tender the contract to supply and install a fully accessible precast public washroom building for Port Robinson East Park. And two, that the proposed work plan to address operational improvements near the entrances of the park be received for information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, I mentioned, as with the previous report, we all received a couple of emails, and I hope everybody had time to read them. And now, again, I'll open the floor for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to support the report. I do believe, I know that we've received an email in opposition. You mentioned that we received two today. I've only read one, and I've only received one email from any of the residents that's in opposition of this washroom. I've yet to receive any others. I go to the area quite often. I know last year when I was out there, the residents I spoke to are the users with their kids and that stuff. We're more than excited and thinking that as a community we could come together and have a wash facility out there, because of porta potty just wasn't cutting it when you have young kids and need to change diapers. And in the ever-changing world now because of COVID, I think it's even more necessary than ever, and that we re-tender it and see what's out there. I've talked to Jeff, you know, it's a struggle for everybody this time. We're not being able to accomplish what we wish that we could through the community, but I believe it's something the community needs, and it coincides too. I've been out to the site, as the emailer said too. I've been out to the site. We've looked at the drainage, you know, where there's some bulrushes growing and that stuff. We've had complaints for years and that stuff of the ponding in the parks and the mosquitoes. So I think it's a great opportunity to bid on the washroom, get a retender on it, and at the same time be able to incorporate the other necessary works that will be happening in the area, because there's some remediation that needs to be done there, and communities are growing, and the need is growing for these type of facilities, and I support the recommendation for the retender.
Thank you. Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, I can support the washroom. I guess the problem is that it was $93,000, I believe, and we budgeted 50. I don't know if it's possible, but is it possible to put a motion forward that we build the washroom next year and we put 50,000 this year and 50,000 toward it next year in the budget and get it completed next year, so that we don't overrun what we've done this year? I really don't want to. I know we've only budgeted 50,000, so yes, I want the washroom, but no, I don't want to, unless we find out where the money's coming from. I don't want to spend any more.
But Councillor, that report would have to come back and be approved by Councillor once we find out the exact cost on a bid. Okay, so it will come back again. Councillor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll support it because as I read through it, it seems like we're going to step back and take a little time, retender it, look at different options, and try to address some of the concerns of the people close by and in Port Robinson. So it doesn't sound like this is happening overnight, that we're going to look at it again, take our time, and try to come up with something that makes everyone happy. Again, I meant no disrespect to anybody who didn't want a washroom. I just thought it was a great idea. Having kids, having 2 kids at a park, needing a change table, one sitting outside. There's just a lot of reasons I thought it was a positive thing for the people of Port Robinson, and showing that we cared with that. But I like the pace of this one, so I'll support it. Thank you.
Councillor Neal, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the report overall. I like the 1 to 2 month section of it and the 2 to 4 month section of it to look after the other amenities that are around the park. I like the washrooms. My only question is that how are you going to supervise the washrooms? Are you going to do similar to what's downtown Thorold? What's the plan of action?
Go ahead, Jeff, or Curtis.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think Curtis has a better answer than I do.
Go ahead, Curtis.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So typically the process is right now that we unlock the washrooms in the morning, 8 a.m., and then the evening crew around 9 o'clock goes around and secures them and cleans them. So we do have staff throughout the day regularly doing spot checks on the washroom to clean them, and that would be the process for this washroom as well.
Okay, Councillor Neal. Councillor DeRose.
I had the same concern as Councillor Neal, because some residents reached out and complained, worried about vandalism and kids hanging out there and like teenagers and partying. But Mr. Mayor, can I ask you or the clerk, I just want to know exactly what we're voting on, just to clarify it for me, please. Thank you.
I'll let the clerk speak, but it's a retender of the contract. And do you want to, I think it's a retender of the contract and the proposed work plan to address operational improvements.
So are we voting on installing the bathrooms at this point?
No,
that's my confusion.
It's going out for
retender.
Retender, and then that tender would come back to council. Am I correct, Jeff?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. So council have an opportunity to decide whether they want to proceed with the washroom project once we get the tender results back. With respect to the second recommendation, those are matters that can be dealt with within our operating budget We really don't need your direction, but we provided the information so that you know that we are trying to address some of those concerns that have been brought forward and provided a timeline in the work plan.
Thank you, Jeff. I know myself, I'm going to take, I've been invited by residents to go out there, and maybe more of us should have, go out there and have a look and a talk with the residents. Thank you.
Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor, to Curtis. Curtis, seeing some concerns with councillors in regards to vandalism. How have our parks fared since we went to the system of opening them up at 8 in the morning and closing them at 9 at night?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do see vandalism from time to time in all of the parks. I would say that it's not any worse by having them open than it was previously having them locked all day. It's typically the vandalism is done after hours overnight. You get some teenagers typically go out to the park and start having a little fun. So, but again, that's part of the course of what we do. We maintain the facilities, we fix things as we go. We service the community, so it would just be another element that we take care of. But at this point, with the porta potty out there and it being flipped on its roof every once in a while, I don't think this is any of a worse option, having to remove some spray paint versus a porta potty that's on its roof.
So more like during our operational hours, I think we can more or less say while these facilities are open, vandalism is at a way at the bottom. It's more or less when the facilities close, people are out there at night, and that's happened regularly around town, not only in parks. We see that. It happens everywhere at night.
Okay.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, yes.
Councillor Decker, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say I support this report, and I think it's really important to have public restrooms at these parks, and not only for kids, but for the parents that are bringing them in, if there's seniors out there. And yeah, great report, and I'm going to support it 100%.
Councillor Kenny.
Yeah, I'll try one more time. So we hear it's going to be 93,000, so we're going to re-tender it. We're going to re-tender it out. It's going to come back probably 93 or 100,000, whatever. We should be deciding, well, I guess what I'm saying is we're going to get somebody to tender a job. And if we only have $50,000, we should probably be deciding right now if we're going to spend the other 50 and not waste somebody's time tendering the job out. That was my point initially. To get somebody to bid on a job and they know we've got 50,000, we might not be doing it next year. Why are we going to tender it out? That was my point.
And Jeff, do you want to speak to that? Because if the report comes back and there's a costing, then council can make a decision, and usually at that time staff makes recommendations, or they might be able to find money here or there, or they might not be able to. But I think that'll be all encompassed in that report. Jeff, do you want to expand on that?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, and I appreciate Councillor Kenny's comments, because if we're making the decision not to go ahead, then let's not go through the tender process. I think at the time we went out quotations, it was in April, when there was a lot of uncertainty about when things are going to open up, and a lot of contractors maybe couldn't meet contractual obligations by bidding on projects. And that's likely why we got one bid. I don't know that that's a fair market price for the type of facility we're looking for. It may well be that it comes back, it's between $80,000 and $100,000. And if that's the case, then we can make a decision at that time. We also would give us a bit of time to see if there's any interest by local companies or community interest groups that might want to perhaps provide some sponsorship, or maybe we could access any new grants that might be announced in a short little while to help offset some of this additional cost. So that's really I guess the rationale behind going back out to the market. If we guess wrong, well, then at least we'll know what the number is.
Okay, Councillor Kenny. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo what Councillor Decker said. I do agree. I think it's really important that we have these facilities. especially in that park. And I love the fact that we have them open during the day. I always thought it was really weird that we had bathrooms that nobody could ever access in the past. So I'm glad that you can actually use the washroom that the city spent so much money to have there. Like, regardless, if it comes back at 90,000, I think we just have to find a way to make it work, because I personally would rather not go into a porta potty. I'm not gonna lie. I might look for other situations, even with my children, because I don't want to go in a porta potty, and I can't imagine finding that tips upside down. So I think it's great. I think it's part of being a city and having services. So I'm excited to see if we can get some more people bid on it. And I liked all the other information that staff provided as well. So I'm in agreement with this. I'll support it.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWC S 2021-34. I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor Longo. And again, I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman, our Director of Public Works and Community Services.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that the results of the online survey regarding potential dog park locations be received. And two, that council directs staff to review alternate locations for the future dog park, including existing parks within the central urban areas of the community. Thank you.
Okay, speakers, go ahead, Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I received a phone call today from a certain person that I know quite well, and they are willing to donate 9 acres of land for the city to put in whatever they want, including a dog park. So that would be one of the alternate locations that staff would be able to look at, and it is an excellent location. So that is one of the advantages of just passing this particular motion, and we might be able to have a dog park, and the actual land value will be nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Neal. Councillor DeRose.
For you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, I just wanted to make one suggestion. Have we ever, or just a comment to you, or a question, have we ever looked at adding it on the outskirts of Beaver Dams Park? Like the outskirts, I mean the parking lot originally when you drive in from where the pool place used to be, the gas station on the corner, Portland. Have we ever, is that an option at all to try to tie it in with the Battle of Beaver Dams Park reconstruction?
Mr. Mayor, I know that when we developed the concept plan, the potential for a dog park was raised, but was quickly discounted because of the need for parking and some of the other amenities that the community needed. I suppose as part of this review, we could go back and have a look at it, but we've awarded the contract. In fact, I believe they started construction today. So we'll have to move fairly quickly on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Kenny.
Yes, first of all, I want to thank Curtis. I know you, Jeff, you guys worked quite hard on that survey, and we got, one thing I read throughout the survey is nobody wants a dog near their house. Basically, there was 3 places and the residents did not want it. I have a suggestion on city-owned property. At the end of St. David's Road, the old Seaman soccer fields, that land, I know it's been mentioned for housing. It's been tested many times. The land is not feasible for building homes on. We could get it tested. We already know we already own the land. Councillor Neal mentioned some other property. I don't know. Somebody was talking about donating land. I really don't like taking donated land, because I always say there's nothing free in life. I don't even know who Councillor Neal's talking about, but the city owns that property, and I don't think there's going to be any other use for it in the future. Maybe Jeff, you can comment on it, but I don't think building is going to be done on that. It's away from all the homes, and it's quite a large park.
So you're wanting to include that in their when they're looking at locations. Am I correct, Councillor Kenny?
Yes, I appreciate that.
And Jeff, did you want to speak on that?
No, that's fine. If there are any other suggestions that could save us a bit of time, we would appreciate that as well.
The only thing I can say from my experience in talking to different municipalities and what the dog parks are fantastic. I mean, we see them around us, but they're always not most dog parks are not in residential areas. Okay, if you look at in Niagara Falls, it's by that Fireman's Park. You look in St. Catharines, it's up on the hill at the Burgoyne Woods. It's away from houses. So, I mean, that's something I think that needs to be considered when we're looking at locations. But that's my personal opinion, anyway. But I'm all for getting a dog park, and I think it's a need we need in the community, and we've been looking for a location for a long time. So, anyone else want to speak on that? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
In a sense, I've always said, people, like Councillor Kenny said, people don't like them by their houses. They're asking for alternatives. So what he states is down at the Siemens Park and using city land, to me, makes sense. At times I was suggesting McMillan Park area, but even that, in the city, there would be access to water, facilities, so on and so forth, when they look at concepts for having a dog park. The one I totally 100% disagree with is Beaver Dams, the community of Beaver Dams, or the Beaver Dams Park location. To me, 100% doesn't make any sense out there. It's a small community. It's not like we need an inflow of more traffic down there, type of deal with their pets and that stuff. It's like a secluded area of Thorold. The other two ideas, Rolling Meadows and Allenburg Community Center, it's dependent on how the residents of Allenburg Community Center, out of the three, I think Rolling Meadows probably makes the most sense, seeing that it's already a designated parkland. It's already going to be away from existing residential areas. So other than that, as Councillor said, if we could use some city land as down at the old SIU soccer fields, and so be it, or with Councillor Neal's suggestion.
Okay, Councillor Hanley, you're muted. Councillor Hanley, you're muted.
I'll accept it as what council wishes to be. Sorry, I was muted there, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was just saying that I agreed with Councillor Kenny. If they hadn't heard, did we hear that part?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have no further comment.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Texting my kid to bring me water. That's great. Lost my train of thought. Oh, I was just thinking of Mel Swartz Park. I don't know if there's an area like without clearing trees and killing wildlife, if there's a spot there that's kind of away from homes but still close to people. I feel like we've talked about that before though, so I'm not sure if that was like crossed off the list, but just that was the only suggestion I could think of.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2021-43. I have a mover, Councillor DeRose, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence. And again, I turn this over to Jeff Holman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation, there are 5 of them. The first one is that council approve the reallocation of funds from Foley Street water general ledger to Conlin Street, water general ledger in the amount of $4,640 for design and $66,098 for construction. And two, that council approve funding from the Capital Asset Transportation Reserve in the amount of $16,439 to the 2020 capital project for the Transportation Master Plan. And three, that council approve a general budget overrun of $407 for the 2019 FCM Street Scan project. Four, that council approve funding allocation of $481,660.10 from the Capital Asset Transportation Reserve to the components of the Front Street project as follows: $204,910.25 for road construction, $3,795.59 for storm design, $272,954.26 for storm construction, and five, the council approved funding allocation of $132,219.40 from the Waterworks Reserve for the Front Street water construction.
Okay.
Thank you.
Speakers? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2021-44, I have a mover, Councillor Neal, and a seconder, Councillor Hanley. Again, Jeff, you're up. You got a busy night tonight.
Yeah, that's okay. This information report is dealing with the Confederation West Sound area, and the recommendation is that council receive report PWCS 2021-44 for information purposes.
Okay, speakers to this report. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the appropriate staff member. Just curious, why are these sound barriers the city's responsibility and not the MTO's?
Mr. Mayor, there's a long history of this, but generally speaking, the developer has a responsibility to protect or to come up with a design to protect the houses that are being constructed. At the time of this construction, the developer generously donated the land on which the noise wall was to be constructed. The city took ownership of it upon assumption. That becomes a responsibility of the city, of the municipality. And that's one of the things that we're trying to, we'll be looking to correct as we get further development in the Confederation West area. But the short answer is that MTO condition that they impose is a condition of draft approval. And the only way to resolve that is to have a noise barrier constructed and not on their land.
Councillor Longo, do you have more to add to that?
No, not at this point. Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Just, Jeff, in regards to the individuals who have encroached upon that property, is there a resolution what we're going to do for them or about that? Is that our property? Is that ministry property?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that property is owned by the city. There are encroachments that have occurred, and as a result, we're going to, the purpose of this report is to inform you that we're going to have those conversations with the community. In case you get any questions or comments, you'll know what it's all about. We'll come back with a recommendation to see how, if there's consensus on how we can move forward. And what other options there might be to help attenuate the noise in people's backyards.
Okay, because my concern is now that this has been brought up publicly, there's a significant amount of areas within the city that people are probably encroaching on the city's property that back onto vacant land but the city owned. So we may be into a long haul here with addressing issues if we start receiving complaints about people who feel that other areas of Thorold are being encroached upon our right-of-ways. Just to bring that up, but again, a good report.
Councillor Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment. regarding the sound barrier is that nowadays, do they have sound barriers with different construction so that we don't come to this again? Specifically the new subdivisions along the 406, for instance, so that in 15 years from now, because when I was on council back then, but I never thought about the sound barrier falling down within the time frame and this happening, and it could cost us a fairly substantial amount of money.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could also add, we're also looking at other options. You know, these walls, even though they are new design, they also attract a lot of graffiti, and they don't really provide the nicest entrance to the community. We're looking for kind of green alternatives. And so I'm reaching out to other municipalities across the province who have done this effectively. We'd like to get rid of anything that might require an actual wall itself, maybe raise the berm. But we're going to have some further conversations with the Ministry of Transportation to see what they would allow us to do on their property.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PWCS 2021-52. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a second, Councillor Kenny. And again, I turn this over to Jeff Holman.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just intercede, I have a previous appointment and I'm asking to be excused from the council meeting. I tried to get out of it, but I have a contractor here at my place of residence and I need to meet with them.
Go ahead, Councillor Hanley. If you get a chance to come back, we'll welcome you back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we also have some representatives from the Friends of Laura Secord available if there are any questions. But the council, the staff report is recommending three things. First, that council endorse the proposed acute park master plan as outlined in the report. Two, that staff be directed to work with the Friends of Laura Secord group to develop a strategy to implement the various components of the master plan. And three, that funding for the capital improvements and in-kind operating costs be referred to the 2022 budget process for funding consideration. Thank you.
Questions? Councillor Neal, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was trying to get my hand up. Yeah, I like the report. I like what the project is going to be, the two facets of it. The one thing I might add in is a number 4 is a support in principle by the city of Thorold for a forthcoming grant request by the Laura Secord group for relevant funding agencies and organizations. I like to see that put in there because they're going to go after funding and not from the city of Thorold, but from other agencies. And a letter of support by the city would be a long way to help them out.
So you want to make an amendment and add point 4. Am I correct, Councillor?
That's correct.
And do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Longo. Okay. Do you want to repeat that again? Yeah, the clerk would like you to repeat that again.
Support in principle by the city of Thorold for forthcoming grant request by the Laura Secord group relevant to funding agencies and organizations.
Okay, and we had a seconder, Councillor Longo. Does anyone want to speak to that particular item before we move on to the whole report? Seeing none, we'll all those in favor of the addition? Opposed? That's carried. Now we go back to the whole report, which now has 4 items, 1, 2, 3, 4. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. So the group from Laura Secord, Friends of Laura Secord, thank you for coming. Even though you didn't get any questions, we appreciate everything you're doing and the work you're doing to help make that park to the next level. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Council. Councillors.
Okay, PWCS 2021-57, mover Councillor Longo, seconded Councillor DeRose. And again, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that council approve the purchase and installation of new speakers for the Thorold Community Pool by the Aligned Vision Group at an upset limit price of $2,550 plus HST. And two, that funding for this expenditure be allocated from the Municipal Land and Building Reserve. Thank you.
Speakers to this. Even though it's a speakers that we're doing, is there any speakers to? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, Pete, you're done. Jeff, we're giving you a break now. We're going on to PDS 2021-21. I have a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor Decker. And who's presenting this? Oh, I got Brent. Go ahead, Brent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. This is a report, a recommendation report for draft plan of subdivision and a zoning bylaw amendment for Hansler Heights Phase 2 in Port Robinson West. The report is recommending approval of the draft plan of subdivision subject to the conditions set out in Appendix A of the report, and that the zoning bylaw amendment to rezone the subject lands under the zoning bylaw, which is 60-2019, be approved as well. Thank you.
Okay, do I have anyone that has any questions or speakers to this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. PDS 2021-26. Councillor Hanley's left, so I'm going to have mover Councillor Sentence, seconder Councillor Neal, and I'll turn this over to our Director of Planning and Building Services. I got to get that right. Hey? Development Services. Paul, go ahead. Paul Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council. The recommendations of this report, or that report PDS 20-20 or 2021-26, be received, and B, that the City of Thorold be authorized to enter into an assignment, consent to assignment, and counterparty estoppel agreement, thereby granting consent to transfer the responsibilities and obligations of the site plan agreement for the Canada Summer Games Host Society development to the region of Niagara for completion. And I'd just like to add that currently the region and the host society have signed this assignment agreement, thereby transferring the responsibilities to Niagara region. Once the city grants its consent to that, the original site plan agreement for this development also needs to be amended by changing the names of those parties, just changing the one name from the Canada Game Host Society and replacing it with Niagara Region. And bylaw number 78 of the council agenda is the associated bylaw and agreement to amend that site plan agreement. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the report that there might be.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, thank you, Paul. Any notices of motion? Okay, we're before we go into closed meeting, we should do the bylaws other than the final bylaw. Okay. So what? I just want to make sure I don't. What bylaw am I going to hold back? That would be the one of, what's that? 63? Okay. I just want to make sure I get that right. Okay, first reading of the bylaws. Moved by, again, Councillor Hanley's not here, so can I get a mover? I've got Councillor Wilson. and seconded Councillor Longo, that leave be given to introduce the following bylaws. Bylaw 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, and 78-2021, and that now be read a first time. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Again, I had a mover, Councillor Wilson, and a seconded Councillor Longo, that the bylaws just read a first time be read a second and third time and do pass, and that the mayor and clerk do sign and seal the same, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, now we're going to go in camera. Before we go in camera, I have to read the reasoning. Is that on here? Okay. I have a mover, Councillor Wilson, a seconder, Councillor DeRose, that council resolve into, where is it? That council resolve into closed session for the purpose of dealing with matters pertaining to the chief administration officer's verbal report on exactly what that, can we expand on that, please?
Through the mayor to members of council with regards to an LPAT update.
An LPAT hearing update, okay? So, all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we'll move into closed session, and you have that second login. Am I correct, Matt? Okay, so we'll leave this meeting.